The earth is never truly silent, though it appears so to us, beneath our feet, beneath the soft grass, the tilled soil, the stone-paved streets of our modern world. There is a quiet that has been holding its breath for centuries. It is the quiet of buried walls, of streets that once rang with footsteps, of marketplaces where laughter and bargaining once filled the air. Now they lie still, not gone exactly, but hidden, folded into the layers of the earth, like pages pressed together in a book too heavy to lift. We walk over them, without knowing. Our towns and cities, our farms and forests, sit atop the remnants of other lives. People whose names are no longer spoken, whose languages no longer echo in the air. Their homes are now packed in clay, their doorways blocked by soil and stone. Where once the wind passed through open windows, it now moves over grassy fields or desert plains. The life they knew has been sealed away in darkness, a darkness so complete that only the patient hands of time, or the careful hands of archaeologists, might lift the cover. Beneath us, these civilizations sleep, and in that sleep, they dream still. Dream of the days when rivers flowed beside their cities, when fires burned in their hearths, when children ran through narrow streets with the same joy ours do now. Yet no dream is immune to the slow patience of the earth. The rains fall, the seasons turn, and slowly, what was once proud and tall begins to sink. A collapsed roof becomes a mound, a street once busy becomes a hollow trench, and then as the centuries pass, nature smooths the edges, grass grows, sand drifts, trees take root, until all that is left above ground is a calm, unremarkable surface. But below that calm surface lies a story, many stories that have not yet been told. History is not only found in books, carved into monuments, or displayed in museums. Much of it lies beneath us, unseen, untouched. Our planet is an archivist, with infinite patience, storing fragments of our past in layers of earth, in the sediment at the bottom of lakes, in the frozen embrace of glaciers. The deeper one digs, the further back one travels, not only in distance, but in time. A single layer of compacted soil might represent decades or even centuries, and in those layers, the smallest of details, a shard of pottery, a charred seed, a piece of woven cloth, can speak volumes about people long forgotten. Think of the places you know well. Perhaps there's a quiet field on the edge of your town, a place where nothing much seems to happen, where the wind moves the tall grass, and the sun warms the soil. To our eyes, it is only a field, but to the earth, it is a blanket covering what remains of an ancient settlement, walls now crumbled, doorways filled in, and the remnants of meals shared long ago. These are the buried traces of lives lived fully, now transformed into whispers in the soil. The earth does not bury with malice, it buries with necessity. The same processes that cover the remains of a civilization also protect them. Without the shroud of soil, rain and wind would have erased them entirely. By being hidden, they are preserved. The earth becomes a vault, and inside it, treasures of memory rest waiting. Occasionally, time loosens its grip. A heavy rain washes away part of a hillside, revealing the edge of a stone wall. A farmer's plow strikes something hard, and he pulls from the soil a small figurine carved hundreds of years before his birth. A construction crew digging for new foundations finds, instead, the old foundations of a city no one knew was there. In those moments, the boundary between the present and the past thins, and we are reminded that our world is built quite literally upon the worlds that came before. There is a strange comfort in this thought, to know that nothing, not even a civilization, truly disappears. It simply changes form, moves deeper, becomes part of the foundation of something else. It reminds us that we too are only a chapter in a much larger story. Someday, our cities may lie beneath new soil, our names spoken only in curiosity by those who come after, and perhaps they too will dig through the earth and find fragments of our lives, a chipped cup, a rusted key, a length of wire from a forgotten device. To them these small things will speak of us, just as pottery shards speak to us now. In the stillness of night, when the air is calm and the world is quiet, it's almost possible to feel it, the weight of centuries resting beneath us. It's not an oppressive weight, but a gentle one, like the weight of a blanket across your shoulders. It holds warmth, memory, and a kind of deep peace. Beneath the quiet earth, time moves slowly, walls crumble inch by inch, iron rusts grain by grain, and the stories remain, sleeping, waiting for someone to listen. Our journey tonight will take us to many such places. We will walk across landscapes that seem unremarkable, and peel back the layers to reveal what lies beneath. We will travel from the sun-baked deserts of Egypt to the damp, dark jungles of Central America, from the wind-swept plains of North America to the volcanic highlands of Turkey. Each place holds its own story, each buried in its own way, each forgotten for its own reasons, but all share one thing: the silent patience of the earth, which has kept their secrets for centuries. As we begin, imagine your own feet resting on the ground. Imagine the soil beneath them, the countless layers of earth, stone and memory. Imagine the walls, streets and hearths buried there, unseen but enduring. They are still there, they have always been there, and tonight, with gentle steps we will go down to meet them. Time has many faces. To some it is a ticking clock, the steady march of hours and days. To others, it is the shifting of seasons, the fading of memories, the soft silvering of hair. But to the earth, time is something far slower, far deeper, a patient force that reshapes mountains, buries rivers, and swallows entire civilizations, without haste or urgency. When we speak of the disappearance of time, we are really speaking of how time can take what was once vibrant, visible, and real, and make it vanish. Not into nothingness, but into the folds of the world itself. Civilizations rarely fall in a single moment. The stories we tell, of cities consumed overnight, of worlds ending in one great catastrophe, are often simplifications. More often, the end comes quietly. A river changes course, leaving fertile fields dry. A trade route shifts, and the lifeblood of commerce slows to a trickle. A once thriving population dwindles as generations pass, until the houses stand empty and the streets grow silent. Then come the winds, the rains, the drifts of sand. Roof beams collapse, stones tumble, soil gathers in the corners of abandoned rooms. Decade by decade, century by century, what was once familiar begins to fade from the surface of the world. Sometimes, the disappearance is more abrupt. There are villages swallowed by sudden floods, their homes submerged in mud and silt within hours. There are towns buried by volcanic ash, preserved in perfect stillness. There are entire islands, swallowed by the sea during great storms, leaving only faint ripples of memory in the stories of survivors. Yet even these dramatic endings are only the beginning of time's work. The layers of nature and history build up each new season, adding another thread to the shroud. In time, even the memory of the event itself fades. Take, for example, the Neolithic settlements along ancient rivers in what is now Eastern Europe. Some of these villages were abandoned slowly, their people moving to more fertile lands, leaving behind houses, tools, and hearths. Over centuries, floods would sweep over them, depositing fine layers of silt. Grass would grow, trees would root themselves in the softened ground, and eventually, to the casual observer, nothing remained but a meadow or a patch of woodland. Only the archaeologist's careful trowel could reveal the truth, that beneath this quiet space lies the frozen outline of homes, storage pits, and fire circles that once sustained whole communities. Or imagine the desert's role in this slow vanishing act. In North Africa and the Middle East, winds have blown for millennia, moving sand in vast shifting seas. An entire temple could be buried in a generation, its columns and walls consumed by dunes that advance like silent tides. The process is so complete that without excavation, there is no sign that anything lies beneath. Sand both erases and preserves, concealing history from view while locking it away from the erosive forces of wind and rain. The disappearance of time is not always about burial, however, sometimes it is about blending. In parts of rural Europe, medieval towns fell into ruin after plagues or economic collapse. The stones from their walls were taken and reused in new buildings. The streets were plowed over and turned into farmland. Here, the past was not covered, but rather absorbed into the present. To stand in such a place is to be surrounded by the remnants of history without ever seeing them, each stone in a cottage wall, a fragment of a vanished world. There is also a disappearance of memory to consider. Even if ruins remain above ground, without a living connection, without stories passed down, without records kept, they can become anonymous. A crumbling wall in a forest may once have been part of a great hall, a mound in a field might be the remains of a fortress. Without knowledge, these features fade into the background of the landscape, no more remarkable than a hill or a rock. It is only when someone asks the right question or digs in the right place that the truth begins to re-emerge. And then there is the ocean, the most mysterious archivist of all. The sea floor is strewn with the bones of cities and harbors, ships and ports. Rising tides, shifting shorelines, and sudden storms have taken their share of human creation. In places like the Mediterranean, entire stretches of coast have sunk, pulling with them villas, marketplaces, and temples. In the waters off India, ruins rest in silence, their walls now homes for coral and fish. Here the disappearance of time is complete, in the sense that no casual traveler could stumble upon these places. They are locked away beneath waves, reachable only by divers or machines. The disappearance of time is a paradox. On one hand, it is an erasure, making what once was into something invisible, hidden from view, seemingly lost. On the other hand, it is a kind of preservation. By burying a city in mud, or ash, or sand, time protects it from further decay. It is like a blanket drawn over a sleeping figure, keeping them safe through the long night until morning comes. Consider the way a seed lies dormant underground. It waits for the right conditions, warmth, moisture, light, to awaken. In a similar way, the remains of a civilization wait beneath the surface, asleep but not gone. When the right hands come, when the earth is gently opened, these places can awaken again. A wall sees sunlight for the first time in 1,000 years. A painted pot is lifted from the ground, still carrying the fingerprints of the person who made it. For a moment the gap between then and now narrows, and we glimpse the life that once filled that space. But just as seeds do not all awaken, not every buried city will be found. Many will remain hidden, their stories known only to the earth, and perhaps that is as it should be. Time chooses what to give back and when. We may dig and search, but in the end, we are uncovering only what time allows us to see. The rest remains in the deep folds of history, its silence unbroken. As we move forward on our journey, we will see examples of both the cities that time has hidden and allowed us to rediscover, and those that remain only as whispers in legend. We will walk through streets that have not felt footsteps in centuries, touch stones that were carved when writing itself was new. Each place we visit will be a lesson in how time both takes and keeps, erases and remembers. The disappearance of time is not a tragedy, but a reminder that nothing is truly permanent, yet nothing is truly gone. That beneath every quiet field, every stretch of sand, every rolling wave, there might be a story waiting for its voice again, and tonight we will begin to listen. If the disappearance of time teaches us anything, it is that the earth holds cities, like a library holds its oldest, most fragile volumes, carefully, quietly, and out of sight. One such book lay closed for thousands of years beneath the rolling plains of central Turkey. It is called Çatalhöyük, and it is not merely an ancient town, but one of the earliest large settlements in human history, built long before the pyramids, before Stonehenge, even before the first wheels turned on dusty roads. From above, the land here seems plain, almost unremarkable. The mound that hides Çatalhöyük is a gentle rise in the earth, known as a tell in archaeological terms. A hill made not by nature, but by the accumulated layers of human habitation, built one atop another over centuries. This mound is not high, not jagged, not dramatic, but beneath it lies a city that flourished around 7,500 BCE, a place that may have been home to as many as 8,000 people at its height. There were no streets in Çatalhöyük, no wide avenues, no marketplaces in the open air. Instead, homes were built tightly together, their walls pressing against one another like a honeycomb of human life. To move between houses, people climbed ladders to their rooftops and walked across them, entering their dwellings through openings in the ceiling. The city was in a way a great puzzle, rooms stacked beside and atop each other, forming an unbroken surface where daily life unfolded in the sun. Inside these homes were warmth and intimacy. Walls were coated in plaster and painted with vivid murals, scenes of wild bulls, hunting parties, and mysterious patterns whose meanings we still guess at. Hearths glowed in the corners, used for cooking and warmth. Low platforms lined the walls, serving as both seating and sleeping spaces. In these rooms, families gathered, worked and dreamed, unaware that thousands of years later, strangers would dig through their floors to learn their stories. What makes Çatalhöyük particularly remarkable is how it was preserved. Over time, houses were abandoned, not by being torn down, but by being filled in with mud and debris, then built over by new ones. This constant layering meant that when the city was finally left behind for good, it was already buried beneath its own past. The mound grew naturally from centuries of life and rebuilding, and when the last inhabitants walked away, nature simply completed the work, covering it with grass, soil, and silence. The people of Çatalhöyük lived in a world both familiar and alien to us. They were skilled farmers, tending crops of wheat and barley. They kept domesticated animals, sheep and goats, but also hunted wild game in the plains beyond the settlement. They made pottery, wove textiles, and crafted tools of obsidian, the volcanic glass found in nearby mountains. This obsidian was so prized that it became a kind of currency, traded over vast distances, and yet, despite this sophistication, Çatalhöyük had no grand palaces, no towering monuments, no defensive walls. There was no apparent hierarchy, no single ruler or elite class that we can identify. Life seems to have been organized in a more communal way, each household self-sufficient but connected to the others through shared traditions. In this sense, Çatalhöyük challenges our assumptions about what a city must be. One of the most haunting aspects of this ancient settlement is the way its people treated their dead. Burials took place not in cemeteries, but inside the homes themselves, beneath the very platforms where the living sat, slept, and gathered. Generations might share a dwelling, not only with their children and parents, but with the remains of their ancestors, carefully placed in shallow graves under the floor. In some cases, skulls were removed, painted, and displayed, suggesting a complex relationship with memory, lineage, and perhaps even ancestor worship. When archaeologists first began excavating Çatalhöyük in the 1960s, led by James Mellart, they uncovered not just artifacts, but an entire way of life that had been hidden for 9,000 years. Mellart's work revealed the dense rooftop-connected architecture and the extraordinary wall paintings that set the site apart from other Neolithic settlements. Later excavations, led by Ian Hodder in the 1990s and beyond, brought even greater detail, showing how daily life, ritual, and death were intertwined in this close-knit community. Imagine being one of those archaeologists, kneeling in the dust, brushing away soil that has not been disturbed since long before recorded history. Imagine the slow emergence of a painted wall from the earth, the faint red and black pigments still clinging after millennia. Imagine lifting a small clay figurine from the ground, knowing that the hands that shaped it lived in a world entirely without writing, yet rich in meaning. For centuries, Çatalhöyük lay hidden simply because no one thought to look. The mound was just another hill to those who passed by, a place where sheep might graze, or where the wind could move freely over the plain. Its story was silent, waiting for the right moment to be told. And when it was finally uncovered, it expanded our understanding of what early human settlements could be. The reasons for its eventual abandonment remain a mystery. Climate change may have played a role, perhaps the once fertile land grew less productive, forcing people to move. Social or cultural shifts could have encouraged migration to other areas. Disease, conflict, or a simple change in trade patterns might have drawn life away from the mound. Whatever the cause, the people left, and the city was left to time. The quiet burial of Çatalhöyük was in a way its salvation. Without being exposed to the elements, without being scavenged for building materials or destroyed by later construction, the site remained remarkably intact. Each layer of the mound is like a chapter in a book, telling of generations who lived and died in the same space, reshaping it over centuries. Archaeologists read this book slowly, page by page, uncovering the rhythm of a civilization that existed thousands of years before the first known kings or empires. There is something deeply humbling about standing in a place like Çatalhöyük. To touch the plastered walls, to stand in the space where ancient fires once burned, is to feel the immense depth of human history pressing in. These were people like us in many ways, people who cared for their families, who created beauty, who sought meaning in their lives. And yet their world was so different, so distant, that it feels almost like another reality. As night falls over the plains of central Turkey, the mound of Çatalhöyük rests in darkness once more. The trenches and excavation sites are quiet, covered for protection until the next season of digging. Somewhere under that soil are still unseen rooms, still undiscovered paintings, still untold stories. The earth holds them close, just as it has for 9,000 years. And as we leave this buried metropolis in our journey, we carry with us the image of rooftops in the sun, of painted walls, of ladders leading down into the heart of the human story, silent now, but once full of life. The desert is a master of concealment. With each gust of wind, each drifting dune, it reshapes itself, covering what was once visible, erasing footprints, hiding the traces of roads and walls beneath an ever-moving ocean of sand. Here in Egypt, the desert has hidden many treasures, but few are as mysterious and haunting as the ancient city of Tanis. Today, Tanis lies quiet, far from the main flow of the Nile, its once busy harbor, now dry. But thousands of years ago, it was a place of power and splendor, the capital of Egypt during the 21st and 22nd dynasties, roughly between 1070 and 720 BCE. This was a city of temples and colonnades, of massive statues carved in granite, of priests and pharaohs who walked between towering columns while incense drifted in the warm air. Yet unlike Thebes or Memphis, Tanis was not preserved in the popular imagination. It disappeared beneath the sands, its name and location forgotten for centuries. Even in ancient times, its importance faded quickly, overshadowed by other cities, as the shifting branches of the Nile left it increasingly isolated. Without the river's lifeblood, trade dwindled, and the city's heartbeat slowed. In time, its walls crumbled, its temples fell silent, and the desert began its work. The sands here do not rush in like waves, they creep. Over decades, wind-driven dust gathers in the corners of courtyards, filling the spaces between fallen stones. Grains settle over statues, dulling their features. A floor disappears beneath layers of fine yellow powder. Slowly, silently, the city sinks into its shroud, until only faint mounds mark where great halls once stood. When 19th-century explorers began searching for Tanis, they were not entirely certain what they were looking for. Some believed the city might be the biblical Zoan mentioned in the Old Testament. Others sought it as a curiosity of history, a missing chapter in Egypt's long story. The mound they found seemed unremarkable at first, a rise of earth and rubble, scattered with fragments of stone. But as they dug, the desert began to yield its secrets. Beneath the surface, they uncovered colossal statues, some broken, some still standing, bearing the names of pharaohs from centuries earlier. Many of these statues had not been made in Tanis at all, they were brought here from older cities, especially Pi-Ramesses, the capital of the great Ramesses II. When the Nile shifted away from Pi-Ramesses, its monuments were dismantled and transported to Tanis, where they were set up anew. This act of reusing and recarving gave Tanis an air of ancient grandeur, even in its own time. Among the ruins, archaeologists discovered something even more remarkable: the royal tombs of the Third Intermediate Period. Unlike the Valley of the Kings in Thebes, these tombs had not been plundered in antiquity. The dry, shifting sands had hidden them so well that when they were opened in the 1930s by Piemonte, treasures still gleamed in the torchlight: gold masks, silver coffins, jewelry set with lapis lazuli and turquoise, and funerary equipment fit for kings. The burial of Persezence in particular was a stunning find, a solid silver sarcophagus, the only one of its kind ever discovered from ancient Egypt. And yet, despite these wonders, Tanis never gained the fame of other Egyptian sites. Part of the reason lies in timing. Its discovery coincided with political tensions and global unrest, which kept it from capturing the world's attention in the way Tutankhamun's tomb had a decade earlier. Another reason is that Tanis in many ways is a city of second-hand glory. Its monuments were often taken from older sites, and its period of greatness came in a time when Egypt's power was fractured. But perhaps this very obscurity is what allowed the sands to protect it so well. Walking among the ruins today is an exercise in quiet imagination. The desert wind sighs through the remains of temple walls. Blocks of granite lie tumbled in the sand, some carved with deep hieroglyphs that still catch the sun after nearly 3,000 years. In the distance, the flat horizon shimmers in the heat, and it is easy to picture ships once docking at a river port that no longer exists, their sails catching the Nile breeze as traders shouted in the marketplace. The preservation of Tanis was unplanned, unintentional. It was not a sacred burial, like Pompeii, under ash, nor a deliberate covering like Château-Hoyuk's layered rebuildings. It was simply a case of the desert reclaiming space. The wind brought the sand covered the stones, the city disappeared, and in that disappearance, a strange kind of safety was found. The treasures of its tombs, the fragments of its temples, remained untouched until careful hands brought them back into the light. But there is another kind of mystery here as well. Tanis reminds us that history can vanish not only physically, but also in memory. Great cities can fade from maps and from minds, their names surviving only in scraps of text, their grandeur reduced to a few lines in a chronicle. Even when we find them again, they may never fully reclaim their place in our collective story. For the people of Tanis, life was as real and urgent as our own, yet today, their city is a quiet ruin, known only to those who seek it. In the stillness of the afternoon, when the sun hangs low over the desert, the stones of Tanis glow softly. The desert air is warm and dry, and the sand underfoot shifts slightly with each step. The city's heart no longer beats, but if you close your eyes, you can almost hear it. A murmur of voices in the temple courtyard, the distant creak of a ship's timbers, the call of a priest at dawn. These are echoes carried not by air but by the mind, stirred awake by the sight of stones half buried in golden dust. Tanis is a reminder that the earth is full of places where the past lies just beneath the surface, waiting. Some will be found by accident. Others, like Tanis, will be sought for years before revealing themselves. And when they are found, they do not return to life as they once were. They remain ruins, beautiful, silent, incomplete. But in their stillness lies their power, to make us pause, to make us wonder, and to make us remember that time does not destroy so much as it transforms. From the desert of Egypt, our journey will carry us next into a very different kind of concealment, not the dry drift of sand, but the heavy living weight of a jungle. There in the green depths of Central America, cities too have been lost, not to the emptiness of a shifting desert, but to the relentless growth of nature's most tangled and impenetrable forests. If the desert hides its secrets in stillness, the jungle hides them in life. Here, In the green heart of Central America, the past is not buried under motionless dunes, but swallowed whole by vines, roots, and leaves. Step into the rainforest, and you step into a world where nature is a relentless architect, building over stone with wood, wrapping temples in moss, and binding plazas with roots thicker than a man's arm. This is the realm of the ancient Maya, a civilization that flourished for more than 2,000 years across what is now Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. They built cities of towering pyramids, broad ceremonial plazas, observatories aligned with the stars, and causeways that stretched for miles through the lowlands. At their height, Maya cities pulsed with life, markets crowded with traders selling cacao, obsidian blades, and brilliant feathers, while scribes bent over codices, recording histories in delicate glyphs. Priests climbed steep temple steps to greet the rising sun, and the air was filled with the sound of music, ritual chants, and the laughter of children playing in the shade. And yet, when the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, many of these cities were already abandoned, their plazas were empty, their temples silent except for the calls of birds. The jungle had begun its patient reclamation. Stones that once gleamed in sunlight were now wet and dark with moss. Trees sprouted in cracks between blocks, their roots prying apart walls that had stood for centuries. A canopy of green swallowed the skyline, and vines draped over everything like a burial shroud. The causes of the Maya collapse remain one of archaeology's enduring mysteries. Scholars speak of environmental strain, prolonged drought, overpopulation, internal warfare, and the breakdown of political systems. It may have been all of these, woven together in a slow unraveling. But whatever the reasons, by the late 9th century, in many parts of the lowlands, the great cities, Tikal, Calakmul, Copan, Palenque, were abandoned. Without human hands to clear the plazas and repair the walls, the jungle moved in, and in time, the jungle forgot that these had been cities at all. For centuries, the Maya ruins were known only to the descendants of those who had once built them. Local people told stories of lost cities in the forest, of temples hidden under green hills, but to the outside world, these were just rumors. It was not until the 19th century that explorers, adventurers, and scholars from beyond Central America began to find them. They hacked their way through dense vegetation, following faint stone causeways, and listening for the strange silence that hangs in places once inhabited by thousands. Imagine the moment when an explorer, pushing through thick foliage, suddenly comes face to face with a carved stone stela, its surface covered with intricate hieroglyphs, its top crowned with the weathered face of a ruler, or when a pyramid steps appear from beneath a blanket of leaves, each step worn by the passage of countless feet in centuries past. To these first outsiders, the cities seemed as if they had been created by the forest itself, an illusion so complete that they often referred to them as lost cities. But the Maya were never truly lost. Their descendants still lived, and still live, throughout the region, speaking Maya languages, practicing traditions that reach back into antiquity. What was lost was not the people, but the connection between these great stone cities and the living memory of the wider world. The jungle had taken away the sight of them, and history had allowed them to fade into myth. Walking through one of these reclaimed cities today is an experience unlike any other. The air is warm and heavy, carrying the scent of earth and vegetation. The sound of insects hums constantly, and somewhere in the distance, the throaty call of a howler monkey echoes through the canopy. You step carefully over roots that snake across the ground, your eyes adjusting to the shifting patterns of light and shadow. Suddenly, a wall of perfectly cut limestone rises before you, its base flanked by carvings of jaguars, serpents, and gods with elaborate headdresses. Temples climb steeply toward the sky, their tops piercing through the jungle canopy. Climb to the summit, and you can see the forest stretching to the horizon in every direction, green, endless, and silent. It is a view both beautiful and haunting, for you know that beneath that sea of leaves lie the bones of countless other cities, still buried. still waiting. Some sites, like Tikal in Guatemala, have been partially cleared and restored. Here you can walk among massive pyramids, stand in wide plazas where kings once staged grand ceremonies, and see the causeways that once linked different parts of the city. Others, like El Mirador, one of the largest ancient cities in the world, remain deep in the forest, reachable only after days of travel by foot or mule. Even there, the jungle is always pushing back, always ready to reclaim what is exposed. The irony is that the jungle in its destruction is also the reason these cities survived. Without it, the stones might have been taken for building. The carvings worn away by weather, instead, the trees shielded them, the soil covered them, and the outside world forgot them. What explorers discovered in the 19th and 20th centuries had in truth been preserved by centuries of green silence, but preservation is not eternal. Today, deforestation, looting, and the pressures of tourism threaten some sites. The jungle that once hid and protected them is being cut back, exposing the ruins to sunlight, rain, and the slow erosion of time. Archaeologists race to study and safeguard what they can, mapping hidden structures with LiDAR technology that can peer through the canopy and reveal the layout of entire cities. Each new scan uncovers more than anyone expected: roads, reservoirs, pyramids, proof that the Maya world was larger and more interconnected than we had imagined. Standing in such a place, surrounded by the sounds of the living forest, it is easy to feel the pull of the past. The Maya cities remind us that civilizations are not erased in a single stroke, they fade, leaving behind stones that outlast the memory of the hands that placed them. And like the desert cities, they also remind us that disappearance is not the same as destruction. The jungle does not destroy the cities, it swallows, it hides them, holding them in a green embrace until we are ready to see them again. As the day ends, the forest grows louder, the calls of birds rise and fall, and the light fades into a deep warm gold that filters through the leaves. Somewhere nearby, a temple stands covered in moss, its stairway lined with roots, its summit now the perch of a curious toucan. The stones are cool to the touch, damp with the breath of the forest, and though the voices of the Maya kings and queens are long gone, their presence lingers in the carvings, in the alignment of the structures with the stars, in the very layout of the cities they left behind. When you walk away, the forest closes behind you, the vines sway slightly, as if erasing your passage. Within minutes, it is as though you were never there, and perhaps, in the eyes of the jungle, you weren't. From here, our journey will leave the humid embrace of the tropics and travel to another kind of concealment, one born not of nature but of ice and snow. Far to the north, where winter holds the land in silence for most of the year, an ancient settlement vanished beneath frost and drifting white, only to be revealed centuries later when the ice began to retreat. Far to the north, where the sun barely rises in winter, and the winds bite with a cruel persistence. History is buried in ice rather than earth or sand. Here lies a landscape, both beautiful and merciless, a world of snowfields, jagged fjords, and frozen coasts. It is in this frozen expanse that the Norse once attempted to carve out a life, settling in Greenland over 1,000 years ago, a land of extremes, where survival demanded ingenuity, courage, and a willingness to endure isolation. The Norse arrived around 985 CE, led by Eric the Red, who named the island Greenland, in a bid to attract settlers despite its icy terrain. For centuries, these hardy pioneers established farms along the southwestern coast, building stone houses, church ruins, and small communities that mirrored the villages they left behind in Norway and Iceland. They grazed cattle, raised sheep, hunted seals and walrus, and fished in the frigid waters, creating a fragile foothold in a land that challenged every expectation of permanence. Greenland's settlements were small, and the population never rivaled that of Europe or the Mediterranean. Yet they were remarkable in how they adapted to the harsh conditions. Turf and stone houses insulated against the cold, while their animals provided not only food, but clothing, hides and labor. Churches, simple but sturdy, served as spiritual centers, gathering scattered families together. Life was difficult, but it was life, and for centuries the settlements thrived in the shadow of glaciers and the aurora-lit sky. And yet, as the centuries passed, the same forces that had concealed so many other civilizations began to reclaim them. Gradually, climate changes made the environment more hostile. Winters grew longer, summers shorter, and sea ice increasingly cut off trade and travel routes. Supplies from Europe became harder to obtain, while local resources grew scarce. By the late 15th century, the Norse settlements were abandoned, leaving behind only stone foundations, church remnants, and the frozen markers of a vanished presence. Unlike the desert sands, or dense jungles, Greenland's ice both hides and preserves. Organic material, that would normally decay, survives for centuries, frozen in the permafrost. Wooden tools, animal bones, even fragments of clothing can remain intact, waiting to be unearthed by modern archaeologists or revealed as the ice slowly retreats. And yet, the settlements are difficult to access, often buried under centuries of snowdrift or ice flow, so that the story of the Norse Greenlanders remained obscure for hundreds of years. The mystery of their disappearance has long fascinated historians. Did the Norse succumb to famine, disease, or conflict? Did they integrate with the Inuit populations already present, or simply vanish from the historical record? The truth may be a combination of all these factors. Perhaps their small numbers, combined with climate instability and isolation from Europe, created a delicate system that eventually collapsed under pressure. Whatever the cause, the traces they left behind whisper of a civilization suspended between resilience and fragility, its story frozen in time, literally and metaphorically. Archaeologists working in Greenland often describe the eerie sensation of excavating these sites. A stone foundation emerges slowly from the snow-matted earth. Turf walls, once strong and warm, crumble under gloved hands. Fragments of clay pots, carved bone tools, and iron nails surface, each object a small testament to lives once lived in extremes. There is a sense of intimacy here, of touching the everyday routines of people whose world was so different from our own, yet fundamentally human in its desires, fears, and routines. The landscape itself adds to the haunting quality. Jagged fjords, cut deep into the ice, reflecting sunlight in sharp glimmers, snowdrifts, like white waves over abandoned pastures. The wind carries stories across empty hills, whispering over frozen rivers where children once played and cattle once grazed. In the quiet of winter, the remains of the Norse settlements appear almost spectral, ghostly echoes beneath a silent sky. One remarkable site, known as Brattaleith, was the estate of Eric the Red himself. Archaeologists have uncovered longhouses, a church, and middens filled with remnants of meals and daily activity. The settlement layout suggests a careful, organized life, families living in close proximity, sharing resources, and working together to survive the harsh northern winters. Yet the abandonment of these homes left them to time and ice, transforming a once vibrant human space into an empty, frozen tableau. The preservation of artifacts in Greenland allows modern visitors and researchers to glimpse details that would have been lost elsewhere. Wood preserved in ice reveals construction techniques. Animal bones tell us what the Norse ate. Even clothing fragments hint at adaptation to extreme cold. The cold here acts as both shield and memory, freezing in place a civilization that might otherwise have been erased entirely. It is a quiet reminder that the earth, in its many forms, always holds on to fragments of its past. Visiting these sites is an exercise in contrast. The beauty of the snow-clad fjords and shimmering icebergs contrasts sharply with the vulnerability of the human settlements they conceal. One senses both the ingenuity and the impermanence of the Norse in Greenland, the way life flourished briefly, then yielded to forces greater than human will. It is a lesson in patience, humility, and the inexorable passage of time. As the sun dips low over Greenland, casting long shadows across the icy plains, it is easy to feel the immense weight of history. The abandoned churches and stone homes are silent witnesses to a vanished era, yet they are not empty. In the cold wind, one can almost hear the creak of wooden doors, the low murmur of conversation, the laughter of children playing near the coast. These voices are faint, but they endure in the artifacts and structures preserved by ice and time alike. The Norse settlements in Greenland remind us that disappearance is not always dramatic. There was no single catastrophe that wiped them out, no instant obliteration. Instead, it was a slow, inexorable process: climate, isolation, and dwindling resources quietly nudging the inhabitants toward departure, until their lives became part of the frozen landscape itself. And like all the buried civilizations we have explored so far, the ice has protected what remains, offering us the chance to rediscover and reflect upon a vanished world. From here, our journey moves southward again, but to a very different kind of concealment, this time beneath the soil of Europe, where a medieval city was swallowed by marsh and memory, preserved only in the records of the land itself. On the eastern coast of England, where cliffs meet the relentless North Sea, history has a way of vanishing slowly, swallowed not by sand or jungle, but by water. Here once lay Dunwich, a thriving medieval port that in the 13th century rivaled London in importance. Ships filled with wool, grain, and fish left its harbour, while merchants and sailors bustled along cobblestone streets lined with timber-framed houses. But the sea, patient and inexorable, had its own designs. Dunwich was not destroyed overnight. For centuries it was slowly eroded by storms and rising tides. Sandbanks shifted, tides rose, and violent floods reshaped the coastline. Houses fell into the water, streets disappeared beneath waves, and the once bustling harbour silted over. By the 16th century, much of the city had vanished, leaving only ruins visible at low tide. Eventually, even the memory of streets and houses faded from the land above, leaving the town to exist only in records and in the imaginations of historians. The loss of Dunwich is a poignant reminder of time's quiet persistence. Unlike the grand dramatic collapses of other civilizations, here disappearance was a slow surrender, a patient encroachment of nature. Each storm, each high tide, removed a fragment, a house, a street, until nothing recognizable remained. And yet, the city was never completely erased. Underwater archaeologists and sediment surveys have revealed foundations, streets, and remnants of churches that lie buried beneath the seabed, waiting for modern technology to uncover them. At its height, Dunwich was remarkable. The town hosted markets, guilds, and grand churches, its streets alive with commerce and the rhythm of daily life. Its importance grew from a combination of geography and trade. Being positioned along the Suffolk coast allowed it to connect northern Europe with England, while its harbour served as a gateway for goods and culture. For a brief span in history, it was a bustling hub, filled with human ambition and the energy of a community in motion. And yet, as with many lost civilizations, the reasons for its decline are as much natural as human. Coastal erosion, a phenomenon both slow and unstoppable, gradually reclaimed the land. The medieval drainage systems, designed to protect farmland and settlements, were insufficient against rising tides and shifting sands. Storms of unusual intensity, such as those recorded in the 13th and 14th centuries, accelerated the loss. Each successive generation witnessed more of their town being swallowed by water, a constant reminder of nature's quiet but inexorable power. Even today, Dunwich exists in a liminal state, neither fully present nor entirely gone. At low tide, faint outlines of walls and foundations can be glimpsed beneath the waves. Archaeologists use sonar mapping to reveal sunken streets and submerged buildings, creating ghostly images of what was once vibrant. In the silence of the seabed, the echoes of Dunwich's life remain suspended, preserved in the murky depths where waves wash over centuries-old stones. The story of Dunwich illustrates another form of disappearance, one driven by gradual natural forces rather than conquest or abandonment. It reminds us that the earth, sea, and weather are as much agents of history as humans themselves. A city can be thriving one century and vanish the next, its memory hanging precariously in records, maps, and legend. And yet, there is something compelling in this kind of loss, a quiet meditation on impermanence that resonates with those who study the remnants of human endeavor. Standing on the current coastline, the visitor is struck by the contrast. The cliff edges are stark, the sea relentless, seabirds wheel overhead, calling to one another across the wind. A solitary wooden post marks what may have once been a dock. Imagine the sound of hammers on timber, voices calling to sailors, the laughter of children running along cobbled streets. Now, all is quiet, except for the whisper of waves against the shore. This juxtaposition, the bustling life that once existed and the quiet absence now, creates a profound sense of reflection. Historians and archaeologists continue to uncover new clues, diving into the cold waters, mapping the foundations, and piecing together the story of Dunwich. Each discovery brings fragments of life back to consciousness: a corner of a wall, a church foundation, shards of pottery that hint at domestic life. These fragments allow us to reconstruct in our minds the rhythm of the city, to imagine markets filled with traders, priests walking to their churches, and families living their daily lives, unaware of the slow advance of the sea. Yet Dunwich also reminds us that disappearance is rarely absolute. Even underwater, the city retains its structure, waiting for us to see what remains. Its story is not only in ruins, but also in documentation. Legal records, maps, and chroniclers' notes preserve the memory of streets, markets, and churches long submerged. History, in this sense, becomes a form of resurrection, piecing together what the earth and sea have taken. The quiet loss of Dunwich mirrors the experiences of many other civilizations we have explored. Whether buried by sand, swallowed by jungle, frozen beneath ice, or claimed by the sea, these vanished cities share a common narrative. They were once centers of human life and endeavor, now reclaimed by nature, leaving traces that challenge us to remember. In their disappearance, they teach us patience, humility, and the understanding that time is a force beyond control. As the sun sets over the Suffolk coastline, the waves shimmer in gold and grey, the remains of Dunwich rest quietly beneath the surf, invisible to the casual observer. And yet, if you look closely, if you allow your imagination to wander, the city is alive again in memory, its streets, houses, and people restored briefly by thought alone. It is a place suspended between what was and what is, an echo of human presence that survives in fragments and whispers. From this submerged city, our journey will move inland, away from the coast, to the heart of Europe, where vast forests once concealed settlements that time has only begun to reveal. There we will encounter another kind of forgotten world, one hidden not by water or ice, but by thick woodlands and centuries of human neglect. In the heart of southwestern Germany lies a place where time moves differently, where dense forests rise like walls, and mist clings to every hollow. This is the Black Forest, a realm of towering pines, dark evergreens, and shadowed valleys. For centuries, it has concealed not only wildlife, but also human settlements, small villages tucked away from the main roads, shielded from view, and slowly fading from memory. These were communities that thrived quietly, surviving in harmony with the forest, while the world beyond continued to evolve. Unlike cities buried beneath sand or ice, these villages were hidden in plain sight, protected by the very density of the forest. Narrow paths wound through thick undergrowth, leading to timber-framed houses with steep roofs built to shed snow in winter. Smoke from chimneys curled gently into the misty air, carrying the scent of wood fires and freshly baked bread. Gardens and small fields surrounded the homes, cultivated with care to feed families in a land where the forest claimed more and more as centuries passed. These villages were often self-sufficient. Residents raised livestock, tended crops, and harvested the forest for timber, game, and medicinal herbs. Life followed the rhythm of the seasons, planting in spring, harvesting in autumn, storing provisions for long winters. Festivals and religious ceremonies marked the calendar, binding the community together with tradition. And yet, for all their quiet resilience, these villages were vulnerable to the passage of time, economic shifts, and political changes that would eventually draw people away. In many cases, the Black Forest villages slowly emptied as younger generations sought opportunities in growing towns and cities. Roads improved, trade routes shifted, and the forest, once a protector, became a barrier. Houses were abandoned, fields overtaken by brambles, and paths swallowed by undergrowth. Without human hands to maintain them, the villages began to disappear, their wooden structures collapsing, their histories fading from local memory. What remains of these settlements today is often fragmentary. A single stone foundation might survive, hidden beneath moss and fallen leaves. Timber beams, now rotted and darkened by time, hint at the scale and structure of long-gone homes. Cemeteries with weathered headstones provide glimpses of the families who once lived here, their names barely legible after centuries of rain and frost. Even the forests themselves bear the imprint of past human activity. The straight lines of old roads, the remnants of terraced fields, or the faint outline of water channels used for mills. Exploring these remnants requires patience and a careful eye. Many paths are overgrown, and the forest conceals what might otherwise be easily seen. Hikers and researchers must move slowly, listening to the creak of trees in the wind and the rustle of wildlife in the underbrush. It is easy to imagine the lives once lived here, children running through the trees, artisans shaping wood and stone, families sharing meals in warm firelit kitchens. These visions exist not in the stones themselves, but in the imagination, reconstructed from the subtle traces left behind. The Black Forest villages also hold stories beyond their architecture. Local folklore tells of spirits, forest guardians, and hidden treasures, tales born from generations of living closely with nature, where every shadow and rustle could inspire caution or wonder. Some legends speak of entire hamlets swallowed by the forest overnight. Though these are likely exaggerations, they echo the slow disappearance of settlements over centuries. In every story, there is a recognition of the forest's power, both nurturing and reclaiming, protective and mysterious. Archaeological research has begun to piece together the histories of these hidden communities. Excavations reveal the tools and ceramics used in daily life, while pollen analysis and soil studies show what crops were cultivated and how the landscape changed over time. Even small discoveries, like a fragment of pottery or a rusted nail, tell a story about adaptation and survival in a challenging environment. These villages may not have rivaled the grandeur of great cities, but their quiet endurance reflects a deep, symbiotic relationship with the land. Walking through the remains of a Black Forest village, one cannot escape the sense of contrast between life and decay, human presence and natural reclamation, memory and oblivion. The forest is alive, constantly changing, while the villages remain static, frozen in the moment when people last tended them. This contrast is a meditation on impermanence. Everything built by human hands, no matter how sturdy, will eventually yield to the forces of nature and time. Yet there is beauty in this process, a quiet poetry in the way forests reclaim and transform, leaving traces that invite reflection rather than destruction. The air in the forest is thick with moisture, carrying the earthy scent of moss and damp leaves. Sunlight filters through the canopy in soft shafts, illuminating fragments of ruins and creating a dance of light and shadow across broken walls and collapsed roofs. It is a place that encourages slow observation, introspection, and a sense of reverence for the lives once lived. Every rustling branch, every bird call becomes part of the story, blending past and present into a continuous living narrative. Even though many of the Black Forest villages are gone, they continue to shape the cultural landscape of the region. Roads and towns today trace paths once taken by villages. Folklore and traditions echo the rhythms of these lost communities. and in some cases, modern settlements have grown near the old sites, building upon history, while still allowing the forest to hide what was once essential to human life. The forest teaches us that disappearance is not annihilation, it is transformation, a shift in form rather than an erasure. As evening falls, mist rises from the valleys, cloaking the ruins in a soft, almost ethereal veil. The forest hums quietly, alive with the unseen movements of animals and the whisper of the wind through the trees. In this hush, the past feels near, as if the people who once tended these villages are merely sleeping, waiting for the imagination to wake them. It is a space of reflection, of wonder, and of connection to the enduring rhythms of nature and human life. From the Black Forest, our journey will soon move across the ocean to the Americas once again, but this time to a desert far different from Egypt. In the southwestern United States, another lost civilization lies hidden beneath the arid soil, cities carved from stone and adobe, abandoned centuries ago, yet preserved by the dry desert air. Here, silence and desolation have their own stories to tell. The desert has a rhythm, unlike any other place on earth. Its silence is not empty. It hums with the slow, deliberate passage of time. In the arid landscapes of the American Southwest, where mesas rise like sentinels over dry valleys and the sun bakes the earth in unrelenting heat, civilizations have left their mark. Among the most mysterious are the ancestral pueblones, whose stone and adobe cities cling to cliffs and canyon edges, hidden from plain sight and preserved by the dryness of the desert air. The ancestral pueblones, also sometimes called the Anasazi, flourished from roughly 100 CE to 1600 CE, inhabiting regions of modern-day New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. They were masterful architects, building multi-story homes from stone, adobe, and timber, sometimes tucked into alcoves beneath sheer cliff faces. Villages like Mesa Verde, Chaco Canyon, and Canyon de Chelly demonstrate extraordinary engineering skills, with structures designed to withstand both time and the harsh desert climate. These were not merely homes, they were entire communities, organized and carefully planned, with kivas for ceremonial purposes, storage rooms for grain, and roads that connected distant settlements across the desert. The choice of location for many of these settlements is striking. High cliff ledges offered protection from both human and natural threats, while the surrounding mesas provided farmland and grazing space. The ancestral pueblones mastered water management in this arid environment, creating reservoirs, cisterns, and channels to capture and direct scarce rainfall. Every detail of their cities reflects a deep understanding of their landscape, a balance between survival, community, and the sacred connection to the earth and sky. And yet, despite these innovations, these cities were eventually abandoned. The reasons remain a subject of study and speculation. Scholars suggest a combination of environmental stress, drought, resource depletion, social upheaval, and possibly internal conflict. Over decades, families left their cliff dwellings, their homes gradually reclaimed by the desert wind, the sun bleaching the stones, and the occasional flash flood reshaping the canyon floors. By the time European explorers arrived centuries later, these cities were already silent, their streets empty, their ceremonial kivas abandoned. The abandonment of the ancestral Puebloan cities left behind a haunting stillness. Walking among the ruins today, one senses the echo of lives once lived, the quiet laughter of children in a sun-baked plaza, the rhythmic sound of artisans shaping stone and adobe, the whisper of prayers within circular kivas. Though these echoes are invisible, they persist in the careful construction of walls, in the alignment of buildings with the sun and stars, and in the meticulous layout of each settlement. One of the most famous sites, Mesa Verde, offers a window into this vanished civilization. Its cliff dwellings, some stacked 4 stories high, cling to alcoves that provide both shade and protection from the elements. From a distance, the structures appear as part of the rock itself, blending so seamlessly with the natural contours that it is easy to imagine they were always there, waiting to be discovered. Up close, The craftsmanship is evident, stones fitted together with precision, wooden beams supporting roofs and rooms arranged to accommodate daily life as well as ceremonial needs. The dry desert air has preserved these ruins remarkably well, unlike in wetter climates, where wood rots quickly and adobe collapses. Here the buildings maintain much of their original structure. Archaeologists can study floor plans, household artifacts, and even remnants of food storage, to understand the daily rhythms of the people who once lived here. Every artifact, from pottery fragments to tools, reveals a story of adaptation, skill, and the human desire to thrive in even the harshest conditions. Chaco Canyon, another key site, illustrates the grandeur of the ancestral Puebloan society. Large ceremonial structures, known as great houses, rise from the canyon floor, some spanning hundreds of rooms and incorporating astronomical alignments. Roads radiate from the canyon, linking distant communities in a network of trade and communication. These constructions suggest a society highly organized, with both spiritual and practical considerations informing every decision. The desert, while harsh, also offered the opportunity to create something enduring, a civilization harmonized with its environment. Yet, as with other lost civilizations, disappearance does not mean obliteration. The desert preserves fragments that allow us to reconstruct the past. Walls stand in silence, kivas remain depressions in the earth, and artifacts buried in dry soil await discovery. The absence of people amplifies the presence of nature, reminding visitors that life is both fragile and resilient. It is a meditation on the impermanence of human achievement, contrasted with the patient endurance of landscape. Visiting these sites, one is struck by the quiet contrasts, the brilliant sunlight glinting off sandstone walls, the shadowed recesses of cliff dwellings, the deep silence punctuated only by wind or the distant cry of a hawk. The desert seems to breathe around you, holding the past and present in an almost sacred suspension. It is a place where imagination is required to reconstruct daily life, where the mind fills in the spaces left empty by centuries of abandonment. The ancestral Puebloans also teach us about the interplay between civilization and environment. Their cities were sophisticated, yet entirely dependent on natural resources. When conditions changed, whether through drought, soil depletion, or other environmental pressures, the structures they built could no longer sustain life. In this, the desert preserves a cautionary tale. Human ingenuity is remarkable, but it is always bounded by the rhythms of the earth. Despite centuries of absence, these sites continue to inspire curiosity and wonder. Modern technology, such as LiDAR scanning and aerial photography, reveals hidden structures and roads once invisible beneath the desert floor. Every discovery adds to our understanding of how the ancestral Puebloans lived, traded, and connected across vast landscapes. And though the cities are empty of people, they remain vibrant in the imagination, their silent walls inviting contemplation of the lives they once held. As the sun sets over the canyon, the light shifts from harsh white to soft gold and amber. Shadows stretch across terraces and cliff faces, highlighting the intricate geometry of stone walls and the delicate balance between human creation and natural formation. In these moments, the desert feels alive, holding the presence of the past, while quietly observing the present. The silence is deep, yet full of resonance, a reminder that disappearance can preserve as much as it obscures. From the desert of the American Southwest, our journey will soon move toward the rivers of Asia, where a different kind of concealment awaits. There, beneath fertile floodplains, ancient cities vanished not through abandonment or isolation, but through the slow, relentless action of water and sediment, leaving only traces beneath the earth. In the vast plains of northern China, the Yellow River meanders like a golden serpent, carving through history with patience and inevitability. Here, fertile soils once nurtured some of the earliest and most sophisticated human settlements, where the rise of agriculture and the growth of cities laid the foundations for dynasties. Yet beneath the alluvial deposits of centuries, entire communities were gradually buried, leaving their stories hidden beneath layers of sediment and memory. These lost cities tell a tale of human ingenuity, in harmony and tension with nature. Early civilizations along the Yellow River, sometimes referred to as the cradle of Chinese civilization, flourished because of the river's generosity. Its waters irrigated fields of millet and wheat, enabling population growth and the development of organized societies. Villages became towns, towns grew into city-states, and over centuries, elaborate settlements arose, with residential compounds, temples, marketplaces, and ceremonial centers. But the river, generous as it was, could also be cruel. Known as China's sorrow, the Yellow River has a long history of flooding, capable of sweeping away homes, fields, and entire communities. Sediment-laden waters, rich with silt, gradually reshaped the land, burying some settlements under meters of soil. In some cases, cities were abandoned in the wake of repeated floods, only to be rediscovered centuries later by archaeologists probing beneath the layers of earth. The river both gave life and reclaimed it, leaving traces of human habitation beneath its shifting banks. One remarkable example comes from the Shang dynasty period, where excavations reveal cities hidden beneath successive layers of sediment, foundations of homes, remnants of workshops, and even ceremonial altars have been uncovered, providing insights into daily life, governance, and spiritual practices. Tools, pottery, and jade ornaments suggest a society both sophisticated and deeply connected to its environment. The layouts of these settlements reflect careful planning, streets aligned to cardinal directions, houses arranged for communal efficiency, and sacred spaces integrated seamlessly into daily life. Walking through the ruins of these ancient settlements, even in imagination, evokes a profound sense of continuity and impermanence. The river once flowed beside bustling streets, carrying goods, ideas, and travelers. Children played in the courtyards, farmers tended their fields, and priests performed rituals that echoed the beliefs and hopes of the community. Today, all is quiet, the land bearing only subtle hints of human activity. Stones, pottery shards, and faint impressions in the soil are the remnants of lives that unfolded along the river's edge. The Yellow River settlements also reveal the delicate balance between civilization and environment. People adapted to the challenges of flooding with raised platforms, dikes, and irrigation channels, demonstrating remarkable ingenuity. Yet when the river overwhelmed these efforts, cities were abandoned or rebuilt elsewhere. This dynamic of creation and loss repeated across generations, leaving a layered archaeological record that requires careful study to decipher. Each layer of sediment, each buried foundation, tells a story of human resilience, adaptation, and ultimately surrender to the forces of nature. In some cases, the rediscovery of these buried cities has been accidental. Farmers digging for fertile soil, construction projects, or erosion along river banks have revealed fragments of walls, pottery, and human remains. Archaeologists meticulously excavate these sites, revealing street layouts, storage pits, and ceremonial areas. The further one digs, the more complex the picture becomes, a web of social, economic, and spiritual life, once active, now frozen beneath centuries of earth. It is a reminder that disappearance is not erasure, it is concealment, waiting for attentive eyes to uncover what has been hidden. These ancient Chinese settlements also highlight the contrast between permanence and fragility. Stone foundations endure for millennia, yet the materials of everyday life, wooden beams, thatched roofs, textiles, often decay, leaving only fragments to suggest the full picture. The river's sediment preserves some artifacts, but it also erases others, reshaping the landscape into a new form. This duality mirrors the human experience. Civilization strives for permanence, yet is always at the mercy of environmental forces beyond control. Archaeological work along the Yellow River provides more than historical curiosity. It offers lessons in adaptation and survival. The cities demonstrate sophisticated water management, social organization, and cultural expression. They reveal that humans are capable of remarkable achievements, but but also that no civilization is immune to the slow, inexorable power of nature. In this sense, the lost cities of the Yellow River serve as both inspiration and caution, a poetic meditation on the impermanence of human endeavor. Visiting the areas where these cities once stood, one is struck by contrasts. The fertile plains are vibrant with crops today, yet beneath the soil lie remnants of structures that have not seen life for thousands of years. The air is filled with birdsong and the distant hum of modern life, while the earth silently holds traces of the past. It is an immersive experience, requiring imagination to reconstruct bustling streets, marketplaces, and temples from the fragments left behind. The story of these settlements also underscores the interplay between continuity and change. While the cities themselves may vanish, their influence persists. Cultural practices, technological innovations, and social structures developed along the Yellow River laid the groundwork for subsequent dynasties and civilizations. Even as cities disappeared beneath silt and water, the knowledge, traditions, and connections forged by these communities continued to shape human history. As the sun sets over the river plains, golden light reflects off the water, illuminating faint depressions where streets once ran and marking the outlines of ancient city walls. The scene evokes both beauty and melancholy, a reminder of the temporality of human achievement and the resilience of nature. The Yellow River continues to flow, carrying with it sediment, memory, and the enduring traces of civilizations that came before. From the plains of the Yellow River, our journey will shift once again, this time to the mysterious islands of the Mediterranean, where settlements vanished under both human ambition and natural calamities. There, ancient cities were buried not by soil or flood, but by volcanic ash, preserving them in a moment of history that speaks directly across millennia. On the sun-drenched coast of the Bay of Naples, the gentle blue of the Mediterranean hides a story of sudden disappearance, frozen in time. Here, over 2,000 years ago, the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum bustled with life, their streets filled with merchants, artisans, and families. Villas perched along hillsides, markets thrived with produce, pottery, and spices, and temples echoed with prayers. Yet, in 79 CE, Mount Vesuvius erupted with catastrophic force, sending clouds of ash and pumice cascading over the towns, preserving them in a moment of history that still speaks across the centuries. The eruption was both violent and swift, a stark contrast to the slow disappearance of other civilizations we have explored. Residents had little warning, the sky darkened, ash rained upon streets and rooftops, and lava flowed toward the outskirts. Homes, shops, and public spaces were buried under meters of volcanic material, sealing not just buildings, but the traces of daily life, forever freezing gestures, meals, and movements in place. Unlike sites slowly reclaimed by nature, Pompeii's preservation came from sudden catastrophe, turning disaster into a time capsule. Walking through the excavated streets today, it is impossible not to feel an uncanny intimacy with the people who once lived here. Footsteps are mapped in stone, frescoes depict daily activities, mythology, and domestic rituals. Household items lie as though their owners had just stepped away. The contrast between life and death, presence and absence, is palpable. Every corner, from a villa's atrium to the shadowed corridors of shops, evokes the rhythm of a day interrupted by nature's overwhelming force. Herculaneum, smaller but no less remarkable, offers a different perspective. Buried under a dense pyroclastic flow, wooden structures, furniture, and even delicate Parbury scrolls were preserved. The city's homes reveal a wealth of detail about domestic life, from intricately decorated walls to fine cooking utensils. Unlike Pompeii, where ash settled gradually, Herculaneum's rapid burial created an almost perfect snapshot of life, frozen in a single moment, untouched by subsequent decay. The excavation of these sites is a slow, meticulous process, revealing layers of human activity and volcanic sediment. Archaeologists uncover mosaics that illustrate daily commerce, frescoes that convey mythological stories, and inscriptions that reveal the names and professions of citizens. Even graffiti scrawled on walls offers insight into humor, politics, and social interaction, providing an intimate portrait of life in the Roman world. The volcanic catastrophe, terrible as it was, created a unique preservation that allows us to step into a city as it existed 2 millennia ago. Pompeii and Herculaneum also reveal the intersection of human ambition and natural power. These cities were thriving, designed for both commerce and comfort, with villas, bathhouses, theaters, and public spaces carefully constructed to support a sophisticated society. Yet, despite all human ingenuity, they could not withstand the sudden, overwhelming force of Vesuvius. The disaster is a stark reminder of nature's capacity to erase, preserve, and transform human achievements in a single instant. The streets and homes, though excavated, retain an aura of quiet melancholy. Statues stand frozen in place, as do plaster casts of victims who were caught in the eruption, their postures frozen in final gestures. The juxtaposition of vitality and stillness is striking. Bustling marketplaces, now silent, laughing families replaced by the echo of absence. In these spaces, the past is tangible and yet always elusive, a ghostly presence felt rather than touched. Every artifact contributes to the narrative of life abruptly ended. Pottery, tools, coins, and clothing fragments tell stories of daily routines, trade, and domestic habits. Frescoes depict banquets, theatrical performances, and religious ceremonies, preserving the aesthetic and cultural values of Roman society. Even the streets themselves, lined with stepping stones and drainage channels, speak of careful planning and civic infrastructure. The eruption, in an ironic twist, ensured that all these details survived centuries of potential loss, allowing modern observers to reconstruct an entire urban world. The story of Pompeii and Herculaneum also emphasizes contrasts: life and death, permanence and impermanence, human intention and natural unpredictability. Unlike civilizations, slowly faded by climate or isolation, these cities vanished in a moment, yet, paradoxically, that moment preserved them more completely than time itself could have. It is a meditation on fragility, on the narrow margin between continuity and disappearance, and on the extraordinary ways in which history can survive catastrophe. Visitors to these sites today experience both wonder and reflection. Walking along the streets, seeing shops and homes as they were, one imagines the sounds of daily life, the chatter of vendors, the footsteps of citizens, the clatter of carts on stone, then silence. The absence of people is profound, yet the presence of human endeavor, frozen and preserved, is equally striking. It is a quiet form of immortality, a city suspended between past and present, between memory and geology. Pompeii and Herculaneum also teach us about resilience, adaptation, and human creativity. The urban planning, construction techniques, and artistic achievements reveal a sophisticated society capable of remarkable feats. At the same time, their sudden destruction reminds us that even the most advanced civilizations are vulnerable, that permanence is an illusion, and that nature in its unpredictable power ultimately shapes human history. As the sun dips low over the Mediterranean, the volcanic peaks of Vesuvius cast long shadows across the bay. The ruins shimmer in the golden light, their walls glowing with the hues of brick, stone, and plaster. The air carries the faint scent of salt from the sea, mixing with the earthy aroma of centuries-old volcanic ash. In this quiet moment, the contrast between life once lived and life preserved resonates deeply, inviting reflection on the forces that create, destroy, and immortalize human history. From the Mediterranean, our journey will soon move eastward once again toward the Indian subcontinent, where ancient cities lie buried beneath sand and soil, hidden from view, yet waiting to reveal secrets of a civilization that thrived along the Indus River thousands of years ago. There we will encounter another form of disappearance, one shaped by environmental change, urban planning, and the passage of time itself. In the fertile plains of what is now Pakistan and northwest India, the Indus River once carried not only water, but the lifeblood of one of the world's earliest urban civilizations. The Indus Valley Civilization, flourishing around 2600 to 1900 BCE, presents a remarkable story of human ingenuity, urban planning, and eventual disappearance. Unlike sudden catastrophes, such as Vesuvius, or the slow coastal erosion of Dunwich, the decline of the Indus cities seems to have been a quiet retreat, a subtle vanishing beneath layers of soil, silt, and sediment, leaving traces of sophisticated life buried for millennia. Major cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro reveal an astonishing level of planning and organization. Streets ran in a grid pattern, lined with houses built from baked bricks, equipped with bathrooms, wells, and drainage systems that rival modern sanitation. Public granaries suggest centralized control of food resources, while citadel areas hint at administrative or ceremonial functions. Artifacts indicate trade links extending to Mesopotamia, showing that these cities were part of a larger, interconnected world. Yet, despite such sophistication, the civilization gradually receded from the landscape, leaving the earth to cover its achievements. One of the most striking aspects of the Indus cities is their uniformity and standardization. Bricks were made to precise dimensions across cities, separated by hundreds of kilometers, reflecting a shared culture and meticulous urban planning. Streets were carefully aligned, houses equipped with water management systems, and public spaces deliberately constructed to support community life. Walking among the ruins today, archaeologists and visitors alike can trace the flow of daily life, where people bathed, cooked, worked, and gathered. Even thousands of years later, the precision and thoughtfulness of their construction remain astonishing. Yet, the reasons for their disappearance remain partially shrouded in mystery. Scholars suggest environmental shifts, such as changing river courses, recurrent flooding, and climate variation, may have undermined agriculture and disrupted trade. Over generations, populations likely migrated toward more sustainable areas, leaving once thriving cities to fall slowly into silence. Unlike cities destroyed by sudden disaster, these settlements faded quietly, their buildings collapsing gradually, their streets returning to dust and vegetation, and their stories surviving only in artifacts waiting to be unearthed. The excavation of the Indus cities offers glimpses of daily life preserved beneath centuries of soil. Pottery fragments reveal artistic expression and utilitarian design, while seals carved with symbols hint at administrative, religious, and trade activities. Tools and ornaments speak of craftsmanship and personal adornment. Even the remnants of granaries and drainage systems show the community's emphasis on organization and hygiene. Though no definitive written records have been fully deciphered, these physical traces allow modern observers to reconstruct routines, rituals, and interactions of a vanished people. What is most compelling about these cities is the sense of a civilization in harmony with its environment. The Indus Valley inhabitants relied on the river for irrigation, transportation, and sustenance, while adapting their construction methods to withstand seasonal flooding. Houses were built on raised platforms, streets aligned for efficient drainage, and granaries elevated to protect harvests. In this delicate balance of human ingenuity and natural forces, we witness a civilization highly attuned to its surroundings, whose gradual disappearance reminds us that even careful adaptation cannot always withstand long-term environmental change. The ruins themselves are hauntingly beautiful. Streets, though eroded, hint at bustling thoroughfares. House foundations mark spaces where families lived, cooked, and slept. Wells once provided fresh water, and drains carried it away, a testament to practical engineering. Courtyards likely hosted gatherings, discussions, and celebrations. Each brick, each artifact, is a silent witness to lives once filled with purpose, routine, and community, now resting quietly beneath layers of earth, awaiting rediscovery. Artifacts from the Indus Valley also reveal a rich cultural and spiritual life. Figurines, pottery motifs, and carved seals suggest reverence for animals, fertility, and possibly deities, whose identities remain uncertain. These artifacts provide insight into a society that was both pragmatic and expressive, merging daily survival with ritual and symbolic meaning. Even in the absence of fully deciphered written language, the material culture communicates a sophisticated worldview, preserved by the very soil that eventually claimed the cities themselves. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Indus Valley is the contrast between its urban sophistication and its eventual disappearance. Cities that once teemed with life now lie silent, their stories accessible only to those who carefully study remnants. Nature slowly reclaimed the land, rivers shifted courses, and wind and rain eroded the structures, yet the civilization's ingenuity continues to speak across millennia. The past is never entirely lost, it survives in fragments, waiting for attentive eyes to reconstruct the contours of daily life and communal organization. Exploring these sites today requires imagination as well as observation. Walking among the foundations, one envisions families preparing meals, children playing in the courtyards, traders transporting goods, and artisans crafting items for local and distant markets. The contrast between the lively past and the quiet present creates a profound sense of reflection. This is a civilization frozen not by disaster, but by the slow, gentle hand of time and nature, leaving us to trace its story through subtle traces and thoughtful reconstruction. The Indus Valley civilization also demonstrates the universality of impermanence. Across continents and eras, human settlements rise and fall, shaped by environmental forces, societal pressures, and unforeseen events. The meticulous planning and careful engineering of these cities could not prevent their gradual disappearance, reminding us that even the most sophisticated human efforts exist within the larger framework of the natural world. There is a quiet poetry in this recognition, a meditation on fragility, adaptation, and the resilience of memory. As the sun sets over the plains, the earth glows with soft golden light, and the wind whispers across ancient streets, now invisible to the untrained eye. Dust rises gently, revealing glimpses of foundations, pottery shards, and the outlines of houses. The landscape is serene, yet heavy with the weight of history. In these moments, the presence of the past feels tangible, suspended between what was and what is, as the Indus River continues its eternal flow, carrying the memory of a civilization quietly buried beneath its banks. From the Indus Valley, our journey will now shift once more, crossing continents to Africa's Sahara Desert, where a different type of buried civilization awaits. Here stone and sand preserve settlements once thriving along now vanished rivers, offering clues to a forgotten world shaped by climate, human ingenuity, and the passage of millennia. Beneath the vast golden expanse of the Sahara Desert, where wind sculpts dunes into ever-shifting patterns, and the horizon melts into mirages, remnants of ancient civilizations lie hidden. These were cities once alive with commerce, culture, and human activity, thriving along rivers and oases that have long since vanished. Today, sand blanket streets, homes, and marketplaces, concealing entire communities that flourished in an environment now considered inhospitable. Yet the desert preserves them in a way that invites wonder and reflection, a silent testament to human resilience and adaptation. The civilizations of the Sahara were often shaped by water or its absence. River systems that once sustained agriculture and settlement have either dried or shifted course, leaving behind fertile valleys, now buried under meters of sand. Early settlements were strategically located near these waterways, taking advantage of seasonal floods and groundwater for irrigation. Farmers cultivated grains, legumes, and vegetables, while herders managed livestock adapted to the harsh climate. Trade routes connected these communities to distant regions, allowing the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultural practices across vast stretches of desert. One striking example of a Sahara civilization is the ancient city of Tikrit in modern-day Mauritania. Excavations reveal stone-walled settlements, circular houses, granaries, and ceremonial spaces dating back to around 2000 BCE. The careful construction and layout of these settlements reflect both a pragmatic approach to survival and a sophisticated understanding of communal organization. Streets and paths were planned to facilitate movement and trade, while defensive walls suggest concerns about security and the protection of resources. Every stone and foundation uncovered tells a story of a society attuned to both its environment and its people. As centuries passed, climatic shifts brought long-term challenges. Rivers dried, rainfall decreased, and previously fertile land became increasingly arid. Populations migrated toward areas with more reliable water sources, leaving their cities behind. Sand slowly reclaimed streets, walls, and homes, reshaping the landscape and obscuring human achievement beneath dunes that rise and fall with the wind. Unlike sites abruptly buried by volcanic ash, Sahara settlements disappeared gradually, leaving only subtle hints of their presence, until modern archaeological techniques began to reveal them once again. Walking through these buried cities, even in imagination, evokes a profound sense of contrast. Life once flourished in places now silent, vibrant marketplaces, replaced by stretches of sand, and homes meticulously constructed, now partially swallowed by dunes. Tools, pottery fragments, and decorative artifacts emerge from excavation, offering glimpses of trade, artistry, and daily routine. The contrast between human ambition and the desert's slow reclamation underscores both fragility and endurance, reminding us that even in the harshest climates, human creativity can thrive, if only temporarily. Archaeological evidence also suggests that the Sahara civilizations were culturally rich and connected. Artifacts indicate long-distance trade with regions as far as the Mediterranean, sub-Saharan Africa, and even parts of the Middle East. Pottery, beads, and ornaments reveal intricate craftsmanship and aesthetic sensibilities, while burial practices suggest complex spiritual beliefs. These societies were not isolated. They were part of broader networks of human exchange, shaped by geography, yet linked to distant worlds through commerce, ideas, and shared cultural traditions. The desert preserves not only artifacts, but also a sense of rhythm and daily life. Foundations hint at houses arranged for communal living, granaries suggest storage and surplus management, and pathways reveal the movement of people and goods. Even as wind and sand shift, subtle contours of walls and streets remain, waiting for careful observation to uncover their story. In this way, the Sahara acts as both grave and archive, holding the past beneath its golden blanket, while slowly revealing fragments to those who study its depths. Exploring these buried cities requires imagination and patience. Modern archaeologists use satellite imagery, aerial photography, and ground surveys to detect patterns invisible to the casual observer. They follow the traces of ancient roads, the outlines of stone walls, and the faint depressions marking former riverbeds. Each discovery adds to our understanding of a civilization shaped by extremes, a society capable of thriving in heat and scarcity, yet ultimately subject to the slow, inexorable forces of climate and time. The story of the Sahara settlements also emphasizes the interplay between impermanence and preservation. Structures collapse, materials erode, and populations vanish, yet the desert preserves subtle imprints of human activity. Unlike sudden catastrophes, here the disappearance is gradual, almost meditative, a slow absorption of human effort into the natural world. It is a silent lesson about adaptation, survival, and the humility required when living in extreme landscapes. As the sun sets over the dunes, the desert transforms, shadows stretch across rippling sands, revealing the faint outlines of buried streets and foundations. A gentle wind carries the scent of dry earth and distant rock formations, and the landscape seems simultaneously empty and full of hidden stories. In these quiet moments, it becomes possible to imagine the rhythm of life long ago, children running through open courtyards, artisans shaping stone and clay, traders negotiating under the shade of sparse trees, and families gathering around modest hearths to share meals. The desert conceals, yet it whispers, offering fragments of a world once alive. These lost kingdoms of the Sahara remind us of the adaptability of human civilization and the inevitability of change. They illustrate that even in extreme conditions, societies can flourish, build complex communities, and connect with distant lands. And yet, they also demonstrate the impermanence of human endeavor, how environmental shifts, migration, and time can reclaim what was once created, leaving traces for those willing to seek them. From the Sahara, our journey will move once again, this time to the heart of Europe, where medieval villages vanished under the weight of plague, war, and abandonment. There, the remnants of life, preserved in quiet corners, ruins, and documents, will offer another perspective on disappearance, one shaped by human conflict rather than environmental forces. Across the rolling hills and dense forests of Europe, whispers of past life linger in the form of medieval ghost villages. These settlements, once filled with the rhythm of daily life, now stand silent, their cobblestone streets empty, homes roofless or crumbling, and churches stripped of congregations. Unlike cities buried by natural forces, these villages often vanished due to a combination of plague, war, economic decline, and social upheaval, leaving behind a delicate balance of memory and ruin. Today, walking among the remains, one senses the echoes of countless lives, faint traces preserved in stone, earth, and imagination. During the 14th century, Europe faced dramatic upheavals. The Black Death, which swept across the continent, decimated populations, wiping out entire communities and leaving fields untended, homes abandoned, and streets eerily silent. Villages that once thrived with farming, trade, and local governance suddenly emptied as survivors fled or succumbed to the disease. In some cases, new settlements arose nearby, leaving the original villages to deteriorate gradually under wind, rain, and the slow encroachment of forest. War and conflict further shaped the fate of medieval settlements. Localized battles, feudal skirmishes, and invasions often resulted in the destruction of homes, granaries, and infrastructure. Families relocated to safer areas, while entire villages were left to the elements. Over decades, the once vibrant communities became overgrown, roofs collapsed, and walls crumbled. In these ghost villages, every stone and foundation carries the weight of human vulnerability, reminding us that survival often hinged on forces far beyond individual control. Economic decline played an equally important role. Shifts in trade routes, soil exhaustion, and changing political or taxation structures sometimes made farming or commerce unsustainable. Villages that once prospered gradually emptied as residents sought better opportunities elsewhere. Over time, roofs decayed, fences fell, and nature slowly reclaimed the land. Today, remnants of walls, stone wells, and church foundations provide subtle evidence of lives once intertwined with the land, preserved in silence rather than catastrophe. Walking through the ruins, the contrast between past and present becomes profoundly tangible. Narrow streets, now overgrown with wild flowers and moss, once echoed with the footsteps of villages carrying goods, animals, and stories. Courtyards that once hosted markets, festivals, and daily chores now lie empty, touched only by sunlight, wind, and the occasional bird. Churches, sometimes the last structures to survive, stand partially intact, their arches and towers a reminder of both faith and community, bridging the living world with memory. Artifacts found in these villages, tools, pottery, and household items, offer glimpses of daily life. Even small fragments, such as a broken comb or a rusted iron key, hint at routines, relationships, and personal stories. Graffiti on walls, faint inscriptions, and the layout of streets reveal social structures, family life, and the interplay between public and private spaces. Unlike larger cities, where grand architecture dominates, These villages convey intimacy, revealing the quiet, everyday rhythms of human existence that persisted before their abandonment. The natural environment played a quiet, yet persistent role in preserving and transforming these ghost villages. In many cases, forests grew over abandoned homes, weaving roots through stone foundations and carpeting streets with foliage. Rivers changed course, eroding or burying streets, while winds scattered loose tiles and timber. The slow passage of time allows for partial preservation, creating landscapes where ruins and nature coexist silently, narrating centuries of human presence and gradual disappearance. Visiting these villages today evokes a meditative experience. The silence is profound, yet it is filled with traces of life: walls that once divided families, chimneys that vented hearth smoke, and cellars that stored food for harsh winters. The human presence is felt in the air, in the careful planning of streets and houses, and in the subtle marks left on the land. It is a place for reflection, offering insight into the impermanence of societies, the resilience of memory, and the quiet persistence of history beneath the surface of everyday life. Ghost villages also illustrate contrasts between human intention and fragility. Residents built homes with care, farmed the land, and nurtured communities, yet centuries later, those efforts can be reclaimed entirely by nature or erased by circumstance. It is a reminder that even meticulous planning and hard work cannot guarantee continuity, and that impermanence is a constant undercurrent in the human story. Yet, the very ruins themselves preserve meaning, offering lessons, inspiration, and connection to a world long gone. As the evening sun bathes the crumbling walls and overgrown streets, shadows stretch across the land, highlighting textures that have survived centuries. The air is filled with quiet birdsong, wind through trees, and the occasional rustle of small animals. The ruins seem suspended in a delicate balance, bridging past and present, life and memory. Walking through them, one is invited to imagine the laughter of children, the voices of merchants, the prayers of villagers in the church, and the everyday gestures that once defined human existence in these now empty spaces. From medieval Europe, our journey will move toward a final reflection, drawing together the threads of disappearance, preservation, and human ingenuity across continents and millennia. In the closing section, we will meditate on the lessons these buried civilizations leave behind, the beauty in impermanence, and the quiet wonder that emerges when we listen to history's whispers. As our journey through time and across continents comes to a gentle close, we are invited to pause and reflect on the civilizations that once thrived, only to be buried, abandoned, or forgotten. From the deserts of Mesopotamia to the fertile plains of the Yellow River, from volcanic ash preserving Pompeii to the sands of the Sahara, and through ghost villages of medieval Europe, each vanished society leaves behind fragments of its story. These remnants are not merely artifacts or ruins. They are echoes of human ingenuity, resilience, and impermanence. They invite us to listen carefully, to imagine lives lived long before our own, and to recognize the delicate interplay between humanity and the forces of nature, time, and circumstance. In the process of exploring these civilizations, we witness contrasts that illuminate the human experience. Some vanished suddenly, like Pompeii, frozen in an instant by the eruption of Vesuvius, leaving time suspended in ash and stone. Others disappeared gradually, like the Indus Valley cities or Sahara settlements, reclaimed slowly by rivers, sands, and centuries of weather, a quiet retreat from the world that once nurtured them. Medieval European villages illustrate yet another form of disappearance, where social, economic, and environmental pressures led to abandonment, leaving ruins overgrown with nature, yet filled with stories waiting to be discovered. Each form of vanishing teaches a different lesson about the vulnerability and resilience of human endeavors. What becomes clear is the universality of impermanence. Across continents, climates, and centuries, civilizations rise, flourish, and eventually yield to the inexorable forces around them. Yet within this impermanence lies a kind of continuity. The ingenuity, creativity, and culture of these societies leave traces that inspire and educate future generations. The layouts of streets, the designs of buildings, the art and tools, the inscriptions, and everyday objects, they endure in ways both subtle and profound, offering glimpses into worlds otherwise lost. Time may bury, nature may reclaim, but the essence of human life persists, echoing faintly through stone, soil, and memory. These civilizations also reveal the delicate balance between human ambition and environmental reality. The Yellow River settlements thrived with irrigation and planning, yet were challenged by flooding and sediment. Sahara kingdoms flourished with ingenuity, only to be overtaken by shifting sands and climate change. Pompeii and Herculaneum remind us of the unpredictability of natural disaster, while medieval European villages illustrate vulnerability to disease, conflict, and economic change. Across each story, a consistent theme emerges: human societies are resilient, capable of remarkable achievements, but always intertwined with, and dependent upon, forces larger than themselves. As we reflect, there is also a quiet beauty in the act of uncovering these lost worlds. Archaeologists and historians, by studying fragments and ruins, reconstruct daily life, rituals, and cultural achievements. Each discovery adds nuance, painting fuller pictures of civilizations once thought lost. Pottery, shards, foundations, granaries, streets, inscriptions, and artworks. All these fragments together tell stories of laughter, labor, love, belief, and ambition. They are reminders that history is not only written in grand monuments or texts, but also in the subtle, ordinary, and human details that survive the passage of time. There is a profound emotional resonance in contemplating these vanished societies. They teach humility, illustrating the fleeting nature of human life and achievement, yet they also offer hope, revealing ingenuity, creativity, and resilience that endure in memory and material. By tracing the lives of people across millennia, we connect with the universality of human experience, the desire to build, to nurture, to leave a mark, and to adapt in the face of uncertainty. Every buried city, every forgotten village, every lost kingdom is a testament to these enduring impulses, resonating quietly beneath the surface of our present world. The act of listening to these echoes can be meditative, almost like a lullaby from the past. There is a calmness in imagining the daily routines of long-vanished peoples, children playing in courtyards, merchants negotiating in markets, farmers tending their fields, artisans crafting tools, and families sharing meals. In their absence, nature gently reclaims what was once human, yet the traces persist, offering a quiet narrative to those who pause, observe, and imagine. In this, there is both comfort and wonder, a connection across time, a reminder that human presence leaves lasting impressions, even when life itself moves on. In contemplating these stories, we are reminded of the delicate interconnection between memory and preservation. Earth, sand, ash, and time have acted both as destroyers and guardians of human history. The same forces that erase also conceal, preserving details in ways we are only beginning to understand. The fragile line between disappearance and preservation is a source of mystery and fascination, highlighting the serendipity and inevitability of history's unfolding. Each civilization, buried yet partially revealed, becomes a teacher, guiding us toward understanding the balance between creation, survival, and loss. Ultimately, the study of forgotten civilizations encourages reflection on our own place within the continuum of time. Just as rivers, volcanoes, deserts, and human choices shaped the fates of past societies, so too do contemporary actions and environmental forces shape our present and future. The stories of vanished cities and abandoned villages remind us of the transient nature of our efforts, and yet they also demonstrate the profound impact of even small acts preserved in artifacts, memory, and cultural influence. There is a gentle poetic lesson here. Though human life is impermanent, its echoes can endure, inspiring curiosity, imagination, and reverence for generations yet to come. As we conclude this journey through time and beneath the earth, there is a sense of calm awe. The civilizations we have encountered may be hidden, buried, or forgotten, yet they continue to speak quietly and persistently. Their stories invite contemplation, reflection, and imagination, bridging past and present. In this quiet meditation, we find both the fragility and the resilience of human life, the beauty of impermanence, and the enduring magic of memory, preserved in stone, soil, and silence. And as the night deepens and the mind drifts gently towards sleep, we carry with us the whispers of forgotten cities, the echoes of vanished villages, and the stories of civilizations that continue to live beneath the earth. In this calm, reflective space, the past becomes a companion, inviting curiosity and serenity as we rest and dream of worlds both lost and ever present.